they've been targeting indigenous population just because. Even people who is not supporter of Evo Morales, who is not from the mass, they've been attacked only because you look indigenous. If you basically, if you have like a masista face, which means indigenous, they will arrest you, they will attack you, they will not help you in the hospital if you're like injured, and so on. So it's been very racist. It's like a completely racist, fascist, religious camp.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Ramiro with Anticonquista. We're here with Angela Camacho, also known as the Bonita Chola on Instagram. Go on Instagram right now and follow her page at the Bonita Chola. She has amazing content. She describes herself as indigenous descendant, bruja, creator, community organizer, part of Wretched of the Earth, an ancestor in the making, based in London, UK, with roots in Bolivia. We're going to be talking about everything going on in Bolivia, the racist, fascist, imperialist coup that just happened, how indigenous people are standing up and fighting back, and also about her project, the Bonita Chola, and how she's redefining what it means to be indigenous, inspiring a whole new generation of youth who are rediscovering their roots and finding beauty in it. And so I'm really glad to have you on, Angela. Thanks for joining us, Anticonquista. We really do appreciate your work, and we're big fans of it. How's it going out there?
Hi, hello. Thank you so much for the space. Thank you so much for holding a space for such a long time. And I deeply admire of your work too. We have friends in common as well. It's amazing to realize that our networking of the work that we're trying to do and do daily, it has connections all around the world. And that's just beautiful. How's it going here in London? It's cold, but it's okay. You know, we live in the belly of the beast, so capitalism just strikes every day. There's a lot of things going on back home, back in our territory, but I still, you know, we have to wake up, go to work, and act like nothing happened. I found that like very terrifying sometimes. You know, I just need to put this face that everything is okay, but it's not.
Yeah. No, so what do you think, jumping right into it, what do you think about this coup? First of all, we know that dozens of people have already been killed, arrested, tortured. Indigenous people right now in Bolivia after the coup that got rid of democratically elected President Evo Morales. The aftermath of the coup, you have fascists coming into power, people who openly hate indigenous people, racists who call them satanic, and attacks on the indigenous communities right now in Bolivia, the working class. What do you think about all this that's going on right now?
How, like, politically talking, like, you know, like is we need to start recognizing that it is a coup. It is a military coup. It is like a religious basis, racist coup. Just, you know, to put all those tags. It brings a lot of like aspects in the whole country, in the whole continent. It's not only about Evo Morales, to be honest. It's just not all about Evo Morales. It's about what all this process represents, the proceso de cambio, in the whole continent. This is the first opportunity that we have to have a proper process of change for the whole continent. Personally, and what I've been living with my family is that it's been opening a lot of like scars of colonialism, like like a lot of like trauma for like indigenous people. Like when it's just horrible. It is affects like a lot to the population, to the indigenous population, because they've been targeting indigenous population just because. Even people who is not supporter of Evo Morales, who is not from the mass, they've been attacked only because you look indigenous. If you basically, if you have like a masista face, which means indigenous, They will arrest you, they will attack you, they will not help you in the hospital if you're like injured, and so on. So it's been very racist. It feels like a completely racist, fascist, religious camp.
And how do you feel about the international reaction? I mean, we have people all over the world who have come out in solidarity. I myself and Ophelia, who are based out here in LA, we've been out to some of the solidarity protests out here. I know there were a few of them in London and cities all over the world. How do you feel about people coming together and being able to resist and unite during these really dangerous and scary times of fascism?
We have a big community of Chilean refugees here, and they do a beautiful work with embroidery, like embroidery, bordados de la memoria is called. So they've been having, most of them, they're like refugees from the Pinochet era. So they were wonder, like, what will be the Pinochet era if they have internet, media. So, like, for me, like, what's all this connection is from now, like from first time in our history as indigenous people, indigenous descendant people, we have the tools to archive. We have the tools to have our own like narrative, to create our own narrative. What I see in all this solidarity first is like basically with the process of change, people is been learning what it means, all these things that we need to target to dissemble like white supremacy within our continent and the white supremacy that we absorb as population, even as indigenous population, and the connections that I have with the whole aspect of politics, social politics, and so on. And as well as the solidarity that it builds media, the solidarity that we never had before. Like the news now, they don't have, you don't have borders with news. Like I don't know you, and we know each other through media, and we know we can like create like a red, like a community without knowing each other, and we didn't have that before.
Yeah, that's very true, and it ties into the contradiction of capitalism and imperialism. That while at the same time, you know, you have more distractions, more alienation under capitalism, you know, racism and appear like you know racist beauty standards online. It also provides a tool for people to organize across borders, like you said, and create a transnational, international solidarity movement with Bolivia and indigenous people. And I think one of the coolest things for me has been seeing different indigenous groups across the world, especially in Latin America, that have come out in solidarity with the people of Bolivia. I think that's been something that's really beautiful.
Yes, definitely. It's been something very beautiful. It's been something like our struggle has no borders anymore. Before
Yeah.
we in history we've been isolated. We not have way to contact, especially not only because of the borders, because of tools, resources, class. Like no, everyone have access to these things. Like to make a call, to send a telegram. Like, but now it's just so accessible, and it's been more accessible, and that's something like that we need to start think about it a lot. Like I receive like all audios of people that I don't really know, that I don't know. They will just, it will be like we create in the moment like a red of solidarity all around Latin America. I will email people which I don't know, like audios or like content and information, articles. I will WhatsApp people. I will just, just randomly in Instagram, people will contact me, say, oh, can you send me the article? Can you send me that link? Can you send me the audio? And it's just, I learned a lot through this process, these last 2 weeks or so with Bolivia. I learned a lot. I create a lot of networking. And that's something that we never had before. For once, we have the tools to create this narrative, to tell this story from our side. And that's something very powerful.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's really cool. And because a lot of the times, for example, you look back at history and a lot of the accounts of indigenous society in Bolivia and elsewhere have been from like Spanish priests and colonizers, and it comes directly from them as opposed to the people themselves. And I think with social media, we can use it in a way that we tell our own narratives and our own stories. And it kind of ties in with the purpose of your page, the Bonita Chola, which redefines, indigeneity the 21st century, and you highlight a lot of images of indigenous people in everyday life and people resisting capitalism and imperialism. And so, how does your project connect with what's going on in Bolivia? Because I know you started this obviously way before the protests and the election. So, how does the mission of your page and the content that you're putting out connect with what's going on in Bolivia now?
It started, to be honest, with Chile, I think. I think it's the first post that actually shows a information news relevant that it links with the content of the project. It started with Chile. So again, I hang up a lot. I have a lot of Chilean friends here. The Chilean community is very big. And the elders of the Chile community, there's something that they're friends. I work with them many times, and they're part of our community, the fam. So I see the necessity to inform. Like it was like completely blocked. Like it was no news here at all the first couple of days. Um, and the only thing that I could actually do it was just, okay, I need to do a post. I need to do something because this is just ridiculous. Like how come? And I think that was the first time that I used the slide. I just put the picture and I put images as well. And it went to, and then after that, I started doing a lot of stories, a lot of like news stories of like just information, basic information of what's going on in Chile. And then after that, I jumped to Ecuador, and then all these things happened. Like it happened like all together. Like it happened in Peru, in Ecuador, in Haiti, in Chile, now in Bolivia. Like we have a lot of things going on now, and everything is just attacking. Like it's the right, the faces is entering like hard this year in our territory. So, and then with Bolivia, we're exactly the same. Like it was just no information at all, no cover at all. And I feel that I have the platform and I need to do it. And it is related like to indigenous people, it's related to the movement, it's related to socialists, it's related to trying to dismantle like white supremacy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, definitely, and it's a good counterbalance to a lot of the garbage that we're getting from mainstream media, because for every one or two posts that you and I do, or others that are in defense of the Bolivian people, indigeneity, there's like a million articles by mainstream media that are propagating these racist and colonial attitudes toward the whole situation. So it's a good counterbalance. And I don't know about you, but I noticed recently, within the last 2 or 3 months, random accounts that kind of seem like bots, like robotic Twitter accounts that are fake, that are from so-called Bolivian people that have been promoting, racist and imperialist content. Have you noticed that? Like, I feel like I've definitely seen an uptick.
I have like I have like many accounts in
Yeah.
Instagram because I like to check what's going on. I have accounts where I check imperialism propaganda, imperialism Bolivians that I know that like the faces of the right wing, because I want to know like what's going on, what they're saying, what they're talking, what the strategies they're using. And
Yeah.
basically in a lot of like Instagram Bolivian from the right, um, they're saying to people, if you don't have a Twitter and you don't have to use it, go create Twitter because this is a media war too. So it's just basically that. It's just people just first fake accounts, and like it can be like something like a program or robotic as well, as you say. But it's basically people instigating people. That's just to jump and do media about what's going on in Bolivia, to support imperialism, to support like fascism, to support like basically that.
Right. Yeah, and it's so framed in this whole social justicey technique that is resemblant of the new form of imperialism, where instead of outright doing, Bolivia is interesting because I think the coup that happened in Bolivia, it was like a hybrid war. You have media on the one hand, you have the military, some fractures in the military, you have these bots, you have tech companies like Tesla that have invested in lithium, because people forget that Bolivia has the largest lithium reserve in the world, and it's been a hybrid war in pursuit of those resources, because there are really valuable resources in Bolivia that actually hold the key to possibly unlocking green renewable energy across the world that wouldn't be dependent on oil and petroleum. And so you have a lot of institutions like The Economist, like ABC, CNN, like all these media companies that are owned by oil companies speaking in favor of the coup because they know that the new government will privatize the lithium reserves, privatize the minerals, the resources, and give it back to companies in Wall Street and London. And so I think what's interesting is that, like you yourself earlier said, you're in the belly of the beast. You're in the place now where all of that capital, all of the money made from privatizing lithium and other resources in Bolivia is going to go back to the city of London and other places, and it connects to how you're fighting back, which I think is pretty cool.
The people just, as you say, like I think so. There is 33 million tons, or like I don't know, of lithium in the world, and 21 they are in Bolivia, which is as plain as that, as plain as that. And yeah, definitely, people completely forget about the thing. I think so. I did so a post somewhere, and then I forgot to repost it, but it's just basically that. Again, like I think like this is like I've been thinking lately, like this is like very well orchestrated as well, because the COP was going to be in Chile, no anymore. So the COP, like it's moved to Spain, I think now. I haven't followed that. So it's all these things that were finally, imagine a COP, a climate like symposium, a climate organization going to a place like Latin America. Obviously, you're going to have a big mass of land defenders, organizers, grassroots going to Chile to just, like hold a space. But all of the sudden we have this. Why? All of the sudden we have this. They move it to Spain now. It's just very it's very curious, like the people is not questioning this.
Yeah. And I think what's really interesting about this situation as well in Bolivia has been the fact that it's exposed the racial lines in Latin America that I think a lot of times people forget about or ignore. For example, the current coup government in Bolivia right now, the policies that they want to institute are very similar to like apartheid South Africa, where you have a very small oligarchy, wider, wealthier colonizer class that has historically oppressed the majority indigenous people, extracted their labor, and have made all the money for themselves. And in South Africa, you had a similar situation with the Boers, where you had white settlers who moved to Africa, owned 90% of the land, made like 80% of the profits, and were only like maybe 9% of the population. And so I think there's kind of a similar situation in Bolivia. And a lot of times people tend to view Latin America within the focus of just nationalism, like, oh, just Bolivia. But then it harkens back to the idea of the Estado plurinacional, which, Presidente Evo always promoted the concept of there's many nations within Bolivia. There are many indigenous nations, and a lot of people are just now discovering that.
No, of course. Like something that hurt me the most, to be honest, it's just like most of the people that is fighting in Bolivia, if they're fighting for something political, they're fighting for the proceso de cambio. They're like putting their lives not only for Evo Morales, but because of the work that he was trying to do, which is el proceso de cambio, to finally have, to change constitutions, to make plurinational constitutions, to have honest conversations about like white supremacy, about like racism, colorism, and so on, that we never had before. And politicians never had before these conversations openly. I went to Bolivia before Evo Morales and after Evo Morales, and the difference was humongous. Like people was looking me in the eyes, like indigenous people was looking each other in the eyes. So that, for example, because I'm just saying that because where I was born and raised in Argentina, so when I speak Spanish, I do have an accent, and as I speak, and as soon as I speak, people will notice, and that will give me certain privileges when I went to Bolivia. So it's been such a big difference. Like then talking about structure and the resources, but
Yeah,
like the
that's
line
so
of
true.
yeah, the incredible. Like it was just like crazy. Like the difference from like the first. Because I remember going when I was in my 20s, and then like going late in my 30s, and the difference was amazing, amazing. Uh, Talking about like like the open conversations of like how Latin America is so racist. People don't know that about Latin America. People say, oh, like it's there is racism everywhere. Like in Latin America, it's in your face.
Oh
And
yeah.
in places like Bolivia, where La Colonia is still on, racism can be like very brutal. Here in London, there is like Bolivian community, and like some Bolivians don't talk to me because I'm indigenous or indigenous descending.
Wow.
From certain areas of they don't mix. Here, the like community in the diaspora, they don't mix. People from El Altiplano for the highlands with like other people from the valley, they
In
just don't
Santa
mix.
Cruz.
Santa Cruz, Canvas.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, they don't mix. And this is the people who are like they're like first they're like European descendants, most of them. You have indigenous communities too, like I'm not gonna say no. And but like most of them they're like landowners, they're wealthy. The people Camacho, he's a millionaire.
Yeah.
Camacho is alive, like he has links with like faces and like collectives and a networking, but he's a millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like he's not like he has money. Like he's a millionaire. His family is being like wealthy for like generation. He's wealthy. The
Yeah.
definition of wealthy, okay, it's how much.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
like
Mm-hmm.
those things is something that it hurts me the most. It hurts me the most to hear my mom, who doesn't recognize herself as indigenous, is still in that process because colonization and the scars of being like indigenous in Bolivia was so heavy, and it's so heavy in indigenous people that for one, saying my mom said to me like, Angela, lo que pasa es que nos odian, and she's not Evo Morales supporter.
Mm-hmm.
She's not, but she just said to me, es que nos odian, es que no, esto está, this is happening because they hate us. That's it. So it's been opening a lot of scars as well, and we need to start in a talking in a bit healing community, like process as well. We need to start thinking about it. Like basically, like you being scared of go outside because literally they go to kill you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely true about that process of decolonization because we've been trained even within Latin American and Caribbean media. For example, in the US, you have two main channels, right? You have Univision and Telemundo. And those two mainstream media Latino channels, all of the people they have are white. Or if they have people of color, they're just like in the background dancing or making a fool of themselves. And even in the media, there was a novela in I believe it's Telemundo or Univision, I can't forget, but it was called La India Maria, and it's a popular Mexican novela. And one of the main central characters, Maria, she's an indigenous woman from a more rural part of Mexico. And in the show, she's just portrayed as this silly, like dumb idiot who always falls and is ugly. And we're constantly bombarded with images of white settlers in Latin American media portrayed as beautiful and indigenous people portrayed as poor, dumb, and ugly. And it's just so embedded within Latin American and Caribbean media. And that's why I'm glad you started your page, because it's a great counterbalance to that. And because we really need to not just decolonize our people in terms of pointing out the bad, but also create the good and offer an alternative and actually do it. Because a lot of times, people will just complain about it and not actually do something about it. And I think, starting a page like yours and Anticonquista and others is contributing to building a new conceptualization, appreciation for indigeneity and for combating racism, because we're facing up against hundreds of years of colonization, both economic, political, but also spiritual and mental. We have to realize that we have to open our minds to avoiding that kind of hate and racism.
Definitely, I think so. Like been thinking when I started doing the IG, and it's not a long time ago. I think it was in No, like maybe 3 months, 4 months ago. Like before, it was like my personal account. It was private. Like my account has been private like for a long time. I think so. I make it public maybe a month ago or 2 months ago, and yeah. People, I will just ask people and say like, how do you find me? Who give you this, handle? Like, how do you know? And they will tell me. So, but I'm being like very intentional, especially because I'm a mother and I don't have resources. Literally here in UK, there is no resources of like books or like TV. We just don't have that. So like funnily enough, my son started following me on Instagram. So I go like, well, it's an opportunity to make something out of it. Um, and it was just like basically just trying to focus in that and to make something beautiful, something abundant, something like that is gonna bring happiness, something with beautiful colors. I'm constantly saying like in my head and to friends that like I'm very conscious that I want to be the best ancestor that I can, and I
Yeah.
need to create these resources. I need to create these resources for my community, for my son. They need to be accessible. They need to be free. They need to be easy to make as well. Like many people don't know that I make all the images in my phone. Like
Wow.
I make all the
Really?
images.
What kind of phone
All
you got?
no, like this is a new phone. It's a
Mhm.
Samsung 10 or something like that. But
Yeah.
I just did like maybe 4 images with this phone. But before that, it was a very old Samsung. It was a Samsung 7 or something like that.
Yeah.
And the idea was when I went a couple of years ago back home, I realized that all the collectives that I have, I was making networking or trying organizing and friends, they didn't have laptops in like Macs or like
Hmm.
Photoshop. So I saw like how I can help them out to create like a nice, again, focusing like, I want to have beautiful things. I want to show abundance. I want to have like good things, expensive things. I want to show off. Why,
Yeah.
again, trying to think, why we not allowed to show off?
Hmm.
Why I'm not allowed to have like expensive things? Why? Why do I need to always look poor? Always do I need to look like I need help or like
Hmm.
be grateful. I all the times, especially with in this society that I live here in UK in the belly of the beast, I'm always need to be grateful for things. I don't want to be grateful for things. I've been working very hard. I deserve everything that I have and more. I'm
Exactly.
basically constantly what I say to my son and to my friends, like indigenous descendant people say, we are a miracle. I'm a miracle walking. I survived and my generation survived genocide and I deserve everything. I deserve abundance, and I want to create that, and that's why all these like Instagram like collages I've been making it shows that, and again to rescue all the erased hairy stories that were like completely wiped out by colonialism. Like people again like writing narratives that is not us. So it's just
Yeah.
basically that's how it started. And I want to make it accessible. So when I use only 2 or 3 apps. They're like free apps. They don't take a space in your phone. So when I went back home, I give workshops of how to do it, how to create these images. Because again, like it's not something that I want to keep for me. And it's something that I want to teach. I think so I go on in IGTV, like 5 minutes, like tutorial somewhere there. And when people contact me, say, "Oh, how do you make it?" I just go like, "Look, I send you the link. This is the app. This is the app. This is the app." And it's very easy. It's very like you just follow your instincts with the app, and it's done.
Yeah, that's really awesome. And I think it ties in with Evo's conception of socialism because people think about socialism. We're taught in school, right, from day one that socialism is poverty, socialism is everyone is the same, you all have to wear the same outfits every day, and all this nonsense. And and in reality, we know that it's false. And the kind of indigenous socialism that Evo very slowly but surely was trying to build in Bolivia and the Bolivian people are constructing was based on this concept of buen vivir, of that, harmony with the earth, live according to your means, but people should have what they want. People should be able to have a life of surplus, of they should be able to have nice things because they work for it. Workers produce the wealth of society, and so they should own that wealth. And I think Evo and Mas and indigenous socialists in Bolivia are very attuned to that understanding of socialism, and in fact have a lot to teach so-called socialists in first world countries like the United Kingdom, US, etc., where they think of socialism as like equal poverty, everyone destruction, tearing down, and not building up. And I think that's exactly the right kind of attitude we have to have in these situations, where we have to be constructive socialists. We have to be practical, serve our people, give people the resources to decolonize and to help. Because just like you said, things like Photoshop Premiere, all that stuff is expensive. Like, that's really hard to find in Latin America. It's not accessible. And so the means of production, the tools that create media and conceptions of indigeneity are all owned by a small white ruling class that has owned the country and Latin America for centuries. And so it's time to bring those technologies like, Photoshop and the programs that you're doing to the masses, because that way we can all help create new media, new conceptions of ourselves, of our people and our class in a way that is defined by us, and we are the protagonists. We're not having people depict us, because otherwise we'll end up with like La India Maria and Chica and all these novelas that are just straight up racist. I think people forget that. Like, it's like you were saying, people really do forget that in Latin America, racism is so strong. And what I find interesting is with the case of Bolivia specifically, you have a situation where a lot of former Nazis actually settled in Bolivia. During Operation Condor, there were Nazis who got pardons from the US, relocated to Bolivia, and participated in the torture and experiments on indigenous people and socialists. Nazis, so it's like the concentration camps never came to a close. They just moved to Bolivia and the Andes. You know what I mean? And people need to see it that way, that this is a continuation of the genocide. It has never stopped. And if anything, Bolivia has been an experiment of the oppression of indigenous people. So just like you said, I think this is much bigger than Evo. Me personally, I support Evo a lot. I've always been a big fan of his, especially growing up and coming into leftist politics. But like you said, I think this is bigger than Evo for sure.
It's definitely bigger than Evo. I don't know if you know about El Parlamento de las Mujeres in Bolivia. So one is being held. No, one is just passed, and they're in the middle of all these issues this week, and now they're gonna have another one in Cochabamba, and there were like people like Silvia Rivera Cusicanqui, Maria Galindo talking, and they were saying, coming to this, that this is bigger than Evo. Like at some point, one of them was saying like, I'm not gonna accept the coup because I'm still here. I'm still here, and I'm not gonna accept it. Like people like very important like indigenous feminist women and characters in that space. It's very very strong what's going on in Bolivia. Like the racism that it is in there, it's just like you just die. People, and that there is no like sugarcoating. Just basically, I'm killing you because you're indigenous.
Yeah.
It's just simple as that. And you say like you're like a very big supporter of Evo Morales. I'm a supporter of Evo Morales, but it doesn't mean that I'm not going to be critical of him.
Right.
Like we need to be able to be critical of our own movement. We need to be able to take account, being accountable for our movement and for ourselves as well.
Yeah.
And need to be strategic about it as well. I think about like what's going to happen in 20 years, like what we're going to do in 20, 30 years. Like I do think like in an individual thing, where I'm going to be in 20 years, how I'm going to do this in 20 years, like what's going to happen with my IG, like going to little spaces, like what's going to happen with my IG in 10 years. And like, we need to be more strategic in all the senses. Like the process of change is not only in Bolivia, in a whole political spectrum. The process of change starts with us as well. It's individually as well. Like the process of change, the decolonization, the like learning and unlearning all these things. It starts in ourselves. If we think of our movements like they're like molecular, like we're a cell. Like if the way that I change, it will change son and change my circle of friends and so on and so on. It's just, I don't know, like it was very sad, very like I didn't want ever to finish this way, to end up this way. But another thing is like, like everything changed, everything, we're in a constant change. So now we need to learn. We need to like gather again, think what's gonna happen, what we're gonna do, how is this gonna, what's next, basically, and try to be futuristic about it. Like what we're gonna do now with Bolivia. What, for in my personal like experience or what I've been living is like I have a good networking. Like now I know, I trust this compañera in Bolivia. I build relationships, a strong relationship. Now I'm gonna nourish them. Now I know you, that we have this kind of red, what we can build, what we can do. So it's just basically things like that. Like it's just, I just need to sit down. I think so. Like I feel that I need to sit down, and I need all of us that will be working, like trying to support and amplify and elevate what's going on in the whole Latin America. Just sit down and think like what we're gonna do next, what's gonna happen next, individually, and then like like amplify or like talk to our community.
What would you say are some of the biggest critiques that you had of Evo and Mas within the last few years? And what do you think moving forward are some of those lessons that we need to keep in mind in building 21st century socialism and moving forward?
Like critiques, like I have like many critiques, like in any like we will have in any like kind of like movement. Like one of the critiques that I have is just like why they didn't think strategically, why they didn't create another person to keep going, or to to just go like with Evo. Like why you need to like be always you, basically. We have like how many years, like 10 years. In 10 years you can actually like build up and have other options, but that didn't happen. Another critique that I have is regardless the deforestation, but then like you have like a lot of like colonial thinking that we need to do, like why Bolivia have to do all that deforestation. But what they did, like, in the other hand, like yes, they did a lot of deforestation, but like they have to pay a lot of things. They have to compensate a lot of things. They don't have the structure because we weren't allowed to have certain infrastructure in our country, in our territory. That's the only two big ones that I will say that I will just go, okay, why? This is my critique. That's the only two critiques that I have, that I always say like, yeah, I will just ask more questions about it. But again, there is a lot of things that we don't know. There is That's another thing that I always say to my friends, especially here, because I organize with a lot of like the climate movement and a lot of people, especially Bolivian, like people from Santa Cruz and stuff. Oh no, but the deforestation and like Chiquitania, and I go like, Evo Morales is not the most horrible president that we have.
Right,
All of
right.
them, including him, make many mistakes.
Exactly.
Why we are so like hard on him? Why or Bolivia, like even my parents and my family, why are you so hard on him? Like the
It's a
president before,
process.
I don't know, like it's a lot of like internal anti-indigenism. And like it's basically like even media. Why media, like outside the international media, feel so hard in Evo Morales? Apart from the lithium, apart from all of that, why? Like it's just basically like it's just
Yeah,
that. It's very
that's so
racism and
true.
very indigenous. Why? Even people like who is like mask supporter or Evo supporter, why are you so hard on this? I'm not saying that I'm not gonna make him accountable. He needs to be accountable, and the mass needs to be accountable for these things that for me that my critiques. But why? It's just that. It's just for me. It's just like we need to be honest. Like why even to compañeros here, compañera here, they go like, yeah, you mentioned all these things, and you are like pro Evo and you are pro socialism, but then why are you so hard on these things? Like we need to now, times like this, we need to focus on how we can help and be dual, how we can help and how I'm gonna be critical about these things.
That's so true, and it's connected to a lot of the racism and colonization that goes on even within the Latin American left, where people who are indigenous or black are seen as dumb or not, or lack of, like, not responsible compared to white leftists. And that's also been a big problem, for example, in countries like Brazil, where you have a majority black population. And unfortunately, a lot of the leadership of a lot of left groups and parties has been more white, which, whatever, it's not an issue. But the thing is, it's like you said, a lot of our people have that, deep down inside, they still have a lot of racist views, and they go extra hard on someone who's indigenous or black or a woman, because of these preconceived notions of oppressed people as like incapable, incompetent, acting on capricious, caprichoso, you know what I mean? And so there's all these like stereotypes that are reinforced because of the media, that we then act out on our own comrades and in our own movements. And so it's so true. And I think, like you said as well, this is a proceso de cambio. This is a drawn out process that is going to take years to build. And people act like you can accomplish something overnight, that you can just snap your fingers and be like, boom, we're officially in socialism. And it's like, no, it takes time. And that was my critique. I don't know if you've seen some of the stuff we've been putting out about Bolivia. Is like, right now, for people in the West, especially white environmentalists, right now is not the time to focus on the nitty gritty, to focus on, why Evo, this little thing that Evo did or that, especially if you're a white environmentalist in the first world. Your job is to support the Bolivian people, to fight the racist and imperialist attacks going on, to defend the Bolivian people, because people who are like super cozy in their little, office of some environmental NGO, they have all these critiques about Evo, and he did this wrong and that wrong and this wrong and that wrong, without understanding how much work it takes to even just build a road. Sometimes, especially because when the opposition is so entrenched, when you don't have a full out revolution in the style that Cuba has had, for example, where you have one party, the Communist Party, running the means of production, where you have to kind of negotiate with the los burgueses, right, the bourgeoisie, and you still have to accommodate. It can be hard to build a road, to build a hospital. And so I think those are some of the things that people really need to keep in mind when talking about Bolivia, is that it takes a really long time and a lot of effort to just do some of the minor things that were done. And a lot of great things were done in Bolivia, a lot of tremendous things. But like you said, people just think overnight it can happen.
No, it's just not going to happen. It's 500 years. 500 years of not letting a whole territory not to have like industries, not to have infrastructure, not to have like proper education, not to have like dignity. Like basically, like it's 500 years of that. And in spaces in a territory like Bolivia, that they don't have ports, so it's even more difficult. These things, it's even more difficult. It's just people just don't realize that it's just very hard in the whole deforestation and climate change and the climate movement. But we need to like take into account as well that the people who is more responsible about this is the global south or the global north. Like it's the global north, because they create more like carbon emissions. Simple as that. Who is bringing all these neo-colonialism with like all these open mining, like open mining projects, like the global south or the global north? Is the global north, and so on. There is a lot of things that people don't take into account, especially in the climate movement. And that is why they talking and why they thinking this. That climate movement is just lead now by like white people. Why cis men are the people who are the protagonists in this thing, who has the major voices.
Mm-hmm.
simple as that. And then we need to start talking like why like the climate movement is so white and why they think why is so white? Like, like you're not defending anything. It's just too crazy. Why they put all this pressure in an indigenous person when like we are only the 8% of the population and we like defending the 80% of the biodiversity in the whole world. It's just it's just a lot. It's a lot of stuff that people don't realize and they don't talk. And again, if the circle comes back, it's like your platform like mine, like this information doesn't come out because it's just not convenient. It's not convenient for like white fragility, like people in spaces like Greenpeace, so the followers or the people who like, like is part of Greenpeace, they don't want to know that it's basically like white supremacy fault. Like they don't want to like, white supremacy needs to be accountable. Colonization, like the climate movement is political. It is political as well. But people just don't, the fragility is too.
Too fragile. I like that hashtag too fragile, right? White fragility.
The climate movement, especially here in UK, they're too fragile. They don't want to hear it.
And they created capitalism too. That's what people forget is like the same people who created capitalism are gonna go and lecture indigenous people who have been protecting the earth, who have been protecting Pachamama for hundreds of years, and they're gonna go and lecture them about being eco-friendly and all this and that when they've been the biggest destroyers of the planet, like you said, with pollution and the anarchy of capitalist production, and it's just insane.
It start definitely with colonization. Like the earth dropped a couple of centigrades when the colonizers got here, because of the massive genocide. The earth was a couple of degrees cold. So imagine how much people. Yeah, it's just an article about it in the Guardian.
Yeah, it's insane.
It start actually there. There is a scientific proof that it start there. So it's just like, people don't realize like the responsibility that they have, like at all in the global north. Like there is started to be little changes, but like nothing, to be honest, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
The last coup, no, the coup in France was a joke. This coup, I guess, in Spain now, I think it's gonna be the coup is gonna be in Spain. I think it's gonna be obviously it's gonna be a joke too. I don't know, like let's hope and let's like keep observing what's going on back in our our territory and to see how we can archive and amplify and elevate. That's so far like the job that I can do, and I think that Anti-Conquistas is been doing it again, because it's just crazy and media is just crazy.
Yeah, definitely. And what message do you have, to wrapping things up here? What message do you have for people across the United States, across the UK, who are Latinos, who are Bolivianos, Indigenous, or Latinos in general? What message do you have for them in terms of what they can do to get involved in this fight? Because it's not over yet. People are still resisting in Bolivia. People are still out in the streets defending their people. And what can people like us, people in the diaspora, do to help the indigenous and working class people of Bolivia?
I think so. Like what we've been doing is been like so far, what I can do or what you can do is just make connections, talk. If you don't have the capacity to be in media and like write about it, talk to your family. Start like in your house, talk about these issues in your house with your kids, like decolonization, like starting a process of change, learning about all these things going on. Start in your house, and then after that, it will, resonate. Otherwise, like again, the narratives, they won't change. They just won't change. We can do a solidarity, like verify information. Don't buy information like from like mass media. That's just lies. That's completely lies. Create your own community networking. Create your own your own project. It doesn't need to take your time. It doesn't need to take you money. Like you don't need to get involved like outside of your like comfort zone. Inform, like be accountable, like don't talk for talking, like no sé si like ¿cómo se dice? How do you say postureo? I've been seeing a lot of postureo, like people that all of a sudden get political and it's just like, yeah, I'm an activist. It's just like, but you are accountable to who? Like, where is this information come from? Be accountable. It's possible now with internet. It's only a click, and you can actually be accountable. You can have like make links to grassroots collectives in back home. And it's just super easy. Uplift them, help them in whatever way you have capacity to do so. I don't know. Like I see so much hope. To be honest, I'm being moved with everything that is going on now in Latin America deeply. But again, I think so. We need to sit down and we need to think what's next, how we see each other, like in 1 week, in 2 months, in 5 months. What else we can do? What we can create out of this? Like it needs to like this. This is what happened in Bolivia. What's going on now in Bolivia? It's gonna help us a lot. It's gonna help us a lot and keep going with the struggle and keep going. Like, but I haven't think yet which tools we can create. I learned so much as well. You cannot imagine how much I learned. Like completely humble of the stuff. Like I learned this in these 2 weeks. Like people sending me audios, like archiving, like the solidarity of my siblings here. Like people translating for me, like people doing transcriptions for me because I just really don't have capacity. So that's something that we can do. If you don't have capacity, but you have friends that maybe have capacity, they can do it for you. You can just openly ask. There is so many things that you can do. Like as a Latin person in the diaspora, there is lots of things that we can do. But we need to start thinking about like what we can do, how we can how we create resources.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much, Angela. It was such a pleasure to have you on. Everybody go on Instagram right now and follow the Bonita Chola. Awesome page, indigenous content created by and for indigenous Latin American and Caribbean people. Beautiful stuff there. Make sure to support Angela. Angela, thanks so much for joining us, and thanks for supporting Anticonquista. We really appreciate that.
No, thank you so much as well for holding a space for all of us.
Cool. Peace out. We'll do this again soon. All right. Take care. Thanks again for all your work.